Hi, my name is Archer Lawrence, and this is the second lecture in a course I am producing about using custom GPTs for business automation. This is going to be a step back. The first lecture was a 30,000-foot view, starting from basic prompting all the way to prompts as products. But this one, we are going to go back to the basics and go from the ground up. Even if you've used ChatGPT before and if you've used it a lot, there are still some basic features that you may or may not have known about or used, and we're just going to go over them today. All that we're going to be covering today is the user interface, some of the quality of life features that are built in, and customize your ChatGPT to you and how you like it to interact. You're going to need, at the very least, a ChatGPT Plus account, or if you're in an organization and you're paying for it, a ChatGPT Teams account. So let's get into ChatGPT. So starting off, this is the interface when you have a ChatGPT Plus account. Obviously at the bottom, you have the window where you put in your prompts. But before we even get there, I want to talk about some of the things that surround that. So before you put in a prompt, up at the top left here, you can see which model you would like to be prompting. It's really up to you. GPT-4o Mini is definitely not as intelligent, but faster. So try these out. Move between these if you are trying to find the optimal process for you. Maybe you don't need maximal intelligence. So that's why I wanted to call your attention to it. Be considerate of this because it can have a big impact on your workflow. So once you've selected your model, you can see they give you 4 starter prompts here that are randomized. We're not going to use them today, but we can put in a prompt here at the bottom. So let's try, tell me something I don't know about business automation with custom GPTs. On the right, you're going to see your prompt. On the left, you're going to see the model's response. As you can see, we are getting an interesting take here on how you can use custom GPTs for business automation. And the first thing that I want to point out is, as we get to the bottom here, you will see that there are a few options for what you can do with the output. On the left side, the first one you see here is read aloud. I won't show this right now, but this can be very useful. They have a very high quality text-to-speech model. I find it to be very nice to hear it out loud, especially if you're writing something and you're looking for the sort of tone and quality of the writing. Secondly, you have copy. So this is a big block of text. And if I don't want to have to go highlight it, I can just click this button and then I can paste that very easily into another document or some other form. You can see though, when I paste it, it's adding these notations. This is Markdown, which on the back end, that is how it's getting the bold you can see is represented by these stars, and the hashes get the headings. And so this actually is kind of frustrating, and it's a little bit disappointing that this is how they natively have you copy and paste. It is nice that it holds some of that structure, but in a lot of cases, if you're just copying and pasting into a Word document, you kind of just want it to be the base text. So to be honest, a lot of the time I just highlight and copy and paste, and then you can see what the output is here. You know, it's basically just normal text. So something to consider. Those are 2 different ways of copying and pasting. The next one we have is regenerate. So if you didn't really like this response, you can generate it again. And if you didn't already know this, it is never going to give you the same output twice unless you really, really have tailored the prompt to give you one very specific thing. But you can see this is a completely different list. So sometimes it's nice to just sort of re-roll the dice and see if you got something a little bit better. And at the bottom, it's always going to ask you this: was it better or worse? Think about it and let them know. We are training the model by giving in those pieces of feedback, and the more we do that, the better it gets. So go for it. Same thing as on that line of training the model. If it's really just a terrible response, tell them it's a bad response. And then lastly, you can see here which model was the one used. So they are implementing this new dynamic model selection where it looks at the prompt, determines if it's a complex task or an easy task, and will decide it for you. So sometimes it's nice to look back and say which one it is. And then if you want, you can just immediately rerun with a different model that same prompt and see if you prefer the output. This is interesting. This is what GPT-4 outputs, and this is why I think it's interesting to select between them and try them out. This is a completely different response than what GPT-4o gave out, and maybe you prefer this. Maybe this kind of concise, to the point, without this big list is what you prefer, and so maybe you always want to be using GPT-4. if you see here, when we recreate or basically regenerate responses, these new numbers pop up here with these little arrows. And so what you can do with these is you can just select between the different options that you generated. So this is kind of nice to look back and forth and test them out. Your old ones are not deleted. On that note, let's say we added a little more here. Tell me more about adaptive systems. This is a branch, basically, is the way I think about it, that maybe I'm not interested in. So I can go back to the other one and say, intelligent data parsing. Let me go down that path. And then I can show you a new feature as well, reply. So you can highlight a piece of the response, and instead of typing out, please tell me about intelligent data parsing, you can just click right there and it will be targeted directly at that. There are a lot of little tricks here, and you will learn over your interactions with them when and when not to use them, but I want to just put them on your radar. Another thing, if you put in a prompt and you weren't really thrilled, you wish you had been a little bit more particular in your response, or just want to change it in some way, as opposed to going back down and saying, actually, what I meant to say was this, you can click on this pencil here. You can say, tell me more about how this applies to small businesses. And now, once again, you're going to take a second chance at your prompt and get a different output. And especially on very, very long threads, this can be very useful. You're not wasting a bunch of extra prompts trying to get it to go back. Oftentimes, if it gives you an output that you didn't really like, it can hold on to that context. And so even if you say, forget that or don't do that, it will continue to hold on to that. And so it's nice sometimes to go back and actually edit your prompts so that you don't have that context in the thread. And then you can see here, same thing. You have the same ability to select between your different options. You have to think about, it's not just a single thread. It's not just a single down the line prompt response, prompt response, prompt response. It's more like a branching tree. You can go back and try different branches, and there's actually a lot of different interesting interactions that can come from even just those few different options. One more thing I want to show you while we're here is that if you have a conversation that you really like and you want to share, up on the top right, you can say share chat, and it will provide a link, and another user can look at your text. They can't edit it or interact with it, but they can see your conversation. I believe if the user you're sending to doesn't have a Plus account, they're not able to see threads that have images in them. So there's some limitations to that. Now that we've covered how to have a thread conversation, we will now go into thread management. First of all, if you are done with this thread and you want to move on to a new topic, I see a lot of people will just ask a new question on a new topic, and that's fine. You can do that, but I find that it's helpful, especially later if you want to go back to a specific thread, to start a new thread, which is like this, just on the top left. And it also kind of clears its memory, right? So if, like I said, there was something in there that was the wrong context, or it got confused and you don't want to have that in there, it's often nice to just sort of turn the page. Every time you make a new thread, you're going to see on the left side, this is each of your conversations, and it automatically generates a name. The issue right now, and this is a little disappointing, is that it's basically just this, it's like a search history. It's just this massive list of titles that, these are almost exactly the same. I mean, I was running a very similar prompt, but it's kind of confusing, especially after, if you use this for weeks or months, to go and find a thread. So you can see what I've done here. It did not add emojis. This is a technique that I came up with as a quality of life, is if you add emojis, you can very quickly spot them when you're scrolling down through the list. Oh, there's my AI automation principles thread, right? So it's just something to consider if you want to sort of document them and be able to draw upon them. So what I like to do is just ask ChatGPT to make me an emoji for whatever the relevant thread is. Just click on the three dots here on the right side of the thread, click rename, copy and paste, and type in whatever you would like. The native way to solve this problem that I don't prefer, but I'll show you anyways, is archiving. You can archive a thread. There is, in the settings, and I'll show you in just a moment, there's a place where it stores all your archived threads. Now, that's nice to basically triage them into a separate place, but then also, I'm not 100% sure of this, there's not a lot of great information, but I don't believe you actually have infinite storage here on your threads. I do think at some point it's going to start deleting the old ones, and so if there's one you really, really want to hold on to, make sure to archive it. To sort of transition this into the settings to start to see some of those things I'm going to say, please remember this is useful for my job. And this is a relatively new feature called memory. So you can see here, it says, got it? And it pops up with this new UI that says, finds intelligent data parsing interpretation of custom GPTs useful for their job. And you can click on this link to manage the memories. So this is this new context basically over multiple threads that they've added that allows it to remember certain things about you. Passively, it picks up on details that you actually can't directly input information to this unless you are commenting, please remember this, or you can also say, please forget this, or please edit this memory in the thread. But this context is always going to be fed into the model for every single prompt that you give. And this can be very useful as it gets to know you and gets to know your preferences. The outputs are going to be further and further targeted to what. Here's one that's kind of fun. I have a fish tank that I'm building up. No fish yet, but I'm working there. I'm putting some plants in there, like a java fern, some snails. And so in the future, if I mention something about my fish tank, it already knows I have lots of bladder snail eggs that are growing in there, and it can give me responses about my tank that are targeted to those pieces of information. Sometimes, like I said, because it's passive, it's a little frustrating. It'll remember things about you that you didn't really want it to remember, or maybe aren't 100% true. Maybe you were talking about someone else and it thought it was you. So what you can do is you can delete these memories. So this splatter snail one is taking up some space, so I'm going to forget it. And when I say taking up space, this has a cap. There's a maximum amount of memory, and it will tell you when your memory is full. And so you have to go back and delete ones that you don't think are super relevant, right? You can also just clear the memory completely. But let's say that you are talking to ChatGPT and you really don't want it to update your memory with something. You can do temporary chat. And this is, you could think about this as incognito mode, right? It's basically just a typical chat. You still got to select the model, but when you're talking to it, it's never going to remember something about you. This memory feature is something that I would keep an eye on. I thought it was a very notable and useful addition. So as I said, you can just ask, please memory update here and click on manage memories, but you can also go up here, and this is where we'll get into some of the settings. So you can also find the memory underneath personalization. And this is where you'll see the little description of it. You can click on manage, and then you can see all the memories. While we're here in settings, we're going to just quickly on the list, you have your theme, the different colors. If you're having it write and run code, you can turn on whether or not it's going to be showing you that code or just doing it sort of in the background, checking the language. Earlier, I talked about archive chats. If you click on manage here, you can find all your archive chats. If you are someone who uses the speech model often, you can select the different voice. The data controls is about all your threads here. So if you've shared threads, you can see all the threads that you've shared with other people and immediately go back to them, or to even delete them so other people can't access them anymore. Exporting data references, you can just download every single thread that it still has access to, obviously deleting your account. And then the last one I'm going to cover in here is your connected apps. So especially for businesses, this is very useful, as opposed to having to download your files and drag and drop and upload them every time. Basically, when you click on this paperclip down here, once you have connected them, I can just add files directly from my Google Drive. It just makes it a lot easier to get information in quickly. And then lastly, this is one that's actually existed for a very long time. There's a lot going on here, so I wanted to take a second and sort of put it toward the end so that we can really dive into it. I talked earlier about memory and how it sort of passively is picking up information, but you can't exactly type out or write what it is that you want in there. You can only say, please remember this, and it will make a short version of that. This is not that. This is if I want to explicitly ask it to know something about me, or there's a kind of response format that I'd like it to be giving, I can tell it exactly in my words right here. You can see here, where are you based? What do you do for work? What are your hobbies and interests? Even on a personal note, just being able to have it know where you live and things like that can be helpful. You say, what are some good restaurants? And it already knows where you live and what are some things nearby that you might want to, knows your favorite cuisine, right? And will often recommend that one, right? So you can do a lot of things with this just to get it to be your ChatGPT. And then down here, they show you some starters here, but essentially what this is do you want ChatGPT to be straightforward, to the point? Do you want it to be verbose and flowery? Do you often write prose with it? So not just what do you want it to remember. You could say, please remember that I like this, but this is a slightly more targeted. As the model is outputting, is there a type, is there a format, is there a name that you'd like to be referred to? You can put it in this section to clarify to the model, as opposed to in every single prompt saying, please don't give me a long explanation, just say the required information. You can put that here, and this can be very useful. As you can see here, I actually don't use this, and this is something I should think about. But my issue with both of these is that because it applies globally, there may not be times where I want it to be very, very to the point. Sometimes I am doing long form writing. I use ChatGPT for so many different use cases. This is sometimes a little bit restrictive. And then lastly, you can see here, these are the main tools that ChatGPT has access to. And when we build custom GPTs, these are exact same options you're going to get. Let's say that you never really need it to generate images. You can just turn that off, right? Or you always want it to write code as opposed to executing it with a code interpreter, which can be a little bit frustrating. You can just turn code off. Or you don't ever want to be accessing the internet and browsing real-time information. You're always testing what does the model know natively. You can just turn that off. And then this whole customized ChatGPT section, you can enable and disable whenever you would like. So there you go. We will obviously move on to more capabilities and more advanced prompting techniques and things like that in the later lectures. But as long as we're all on the same page here about this is how you chat with ChatGPT, we can be on the same page and move forward together. So thank you very much for watching. Stay tuned for the next lecture. If you are looking for other content between now and then, you can look through my channel. There's other kinds of content there. This is sort of a hybrid channel. There are some custom GPT tutorials, so I'm basically walking you through custom GPTs that I've already made, specifically for creating art. One there also for a little video game that I made as a custom GPT. Explore the channel if you'd like. If not, I'll see you in the next lecture. Thank you very much.